I always I tell these guys when we come in, it's not a funeral. We're not going to, watching people get executed or buried. So they should be happy when they're meeting with you. Right, Jeff?
Feels like it sometimes.
A funeral?
Feels like it.
Well, that's not the intent. So, Jeff, you got to cheer these guys up, all right?
Oh, Friday.
So anyway, thanks for being here today, guys. And I know there's folks online as well, but education is a big issue down here in Juneau, as it is in most state capitals and legislatures. Education is one of the primary functions of a state government. It was viewed as so important when we were forming the country and the Constitution that it was an item that the states were unwilling to give to the federal government. And so it is a very important issue. You guys know what my background is. And it's a hotly debated topic, not just here, but everywhere. But I want to start out by saying we've had some pretty good conversations the last couple of days with the legislature, members of the legislature, the leadership, et cetera. Everybody wants to get a package done. And so we are working through some ways to try and facilitate that. We just had meetings yesterday. We had meetings this morning. We'll probably have meetings later on. I go to Anchorage here this afternoon to conduct business up there this coming week. But I think I'm hopeful, is what I want to say, that we can get an educational package done. And I'm hopeful we can get it done early so that the school districts, parents, teachers, kids, everybody knows what we're looking at. And so I just want to open it with that. Now, we're going to talk today about everything from tribal compacting to what's in the educational bill that's being introduced. And then we'll talk and answer any questions that you guys may have about these topics or anything in the state of the state or any other topics that you have. If we don't have the answers to your questions, we'll get back to you guys on those questions. So what I'd like to do now is turn this over to Commissioner Bishop, and she's going to open it up with tribal compacting. But I think we have an exciting educational initiative that I think can help a lot of kids. So, Commissioner?
Thank you, Governor. For the record, my name is Dina Bishop, and I'm the Commissioner of Education and Early Development. Healthcare across our state has been transformed through tribal health compacting. What began as a pilot program over 30 years ago has now become a global flagship model. As tribal health compacting emerged in the early 90s, tribal leaders also envisioned the possibilities of tribal education compacting. More importantly, they asked, when could this happen? Well, the answer is the time is now. Today, we announce that the governor has introduced a key component of his school option program. State tribal education compact schools in Alaska through Senate Bill 66 and House Bill 59. Those are public schools in the state of Alaska. The path to this legislation formally began in 2017 with the Alaska State Board of Education, Alaska's Challenge, which ultimately led to Senate Bill 34. That bill allowed the State Board of Education to collaborate with up to 5 tribes to develop an outline legislation for a tribal education public school. Today marks 1 year since that report was actually due to the legislature. Next week, the House Tribal Affairs Committee will hold the first hearing on House Bill 59, featuring a presentation from those tribal partners. This initiative also aligns with the governor's broader education goals to ensure public school options and empowering Alaska students to succeed and have fulfilling lives. What makes compacting so powerful is its foundation and partnership. It unites the strengths and leaderships of both state and tribal governments to achieve a shared goal, providing every student with an excellent education every day. It has been a privilege to work alongside the tribal leaders throughout this process. But before I introduce one of our tribal education leaders, I want to take a moment to recognize Dr. Joel Isaac. I had the honor of serving with Joel as he was the deputy commissioner at the department. He recently completed his doctorate and now serves as the cultural preservation and language director for the Kanaitse Indian tribe. Dr. Isaac,
That's not easy, Joel.
yes. Dr. Isaac played a key critical role as the lead on the tribal compacting project, and he is here with us today. Thank you, Jill.
Let me take this from you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Now I'm pleased,
Take your paper. Sorry, guys.
I am pleased to turn this over to Sonia Scan, Education and Training Director, Lead Education Compacting Negotiator for the Ketchikan Indian Community, and Alaska Region Board Member for the National Indian Education Association. She's here to share a few words with you. Thank you.
Thank you. First off, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity, and I would like to thank all of the tribal leaders out there that have worked so hard for this for generations. This isn't something new, and it has been something that we have worked on for years and people before me, and I want to acknowledge that. I come here with them behind me. I am really very grateful to speak on this, and one of the things that excites me the most about this opportunity is that as we work with our children, we can see how they learn, right? Every child has a different way of learning. We know that one size does not fit all. This isn't about taking away from education, it's about adding to. And would be a tribally controlled public school. So it's open to everyone. And how each tribe in each community does their school will be focused on what works for their communities. Alaska is vast, and there are so many. We were talking about it yesterday, just how many different communities and how things look differently in each community. Like when I come to Juneau, things are different than Ketchikan, and we're close. So I just want to say that this will give an opportunity for our kids to learn. It doesn't mean they're not learning now. It means that there need to be more opportunities. Things are changing constantly, and we know this. We know that through this pilot project, if the tribes are allowed through these bills being passed, that this pilot project will show that we will be able to do this. And there are many tribes who've already started. We started with the A&E grant from it's Alaska Native Equity Programming Grant, and that's how we started our school over 13 years ago. So we have a high school of 9th through 12th graders. We have amazing young people in that class who have gone from reading at a grade school level and below to now reading above college level, or above high school into college level. We are excited that this is an opportunity that many people will have to be able to do. We know the model that's going to be worked on in each community will be something that can be copied, it can be used, it can be given, we can work together. It's about all of us working together to make things good. And sharing the knowledge that we have is a good thing. It's not a competition. It's about children's education. And that's what we need to always remember. We want what's best for our kids. And right now we're not getting what's best for our kids, but we're going to. So thank you.
Chikanik, Dukili Tagashnash, Joel Isaac, Dashtana, Shiiji, Tleka Yist and Ina Shiiji. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all, and it has been my privilege to be the lead on the tribal compacting effort. And I just wanted to be able to give a glimpse into the privilege, what I mean by that. Seeing the tribes work together, thinking about what's transformative, taking decades and thousands of years of experience to the table, and being able to work with an amazing team at the department has really been a life-changing experience for me. And I think that it's something that sets us off in a good way. There were two questions that we kept in mind whenever we hit a roadblock that seemed like we couldn't move through. Is this transformational? And what is best for kids? And that allowed us to work through anything. And so when I see the draft legislation that has now been introduced, it answers those two questions: what is best for kids and what is transformational? And we know that when those things are carried out, our kids will succeed. And it empowers them to be able to succeed wherever they are across the state and whoever they are. And so I just wanted to be able to share that insight and that experience. I appreciate the governor for this opportunity to speak with you all, and the commissioner, and all 5 of the tribal partners. And one of those tribal partners was a pair. So we got to see how tribes can come together, and then we got to see how tribes from across the state could also work together, speaking for themselves, but also thinking about kids from everywhere. So with that, I just, again, Chicken-Neck, Janan, thank you for that opportunity to speak with you.
Thanks, Joel. And just real quick, I'll get it back to Dina, but Joel's being a little humble. He's been working on this along with others. It didn't start this year or last year. This has been going on under our former commissioner, Michael Johnson. This has been a discussion that's been going on a very, very long time, but it's coming to, I guess, fruition now due to the hard work, through people like Joel and Sonia and others. But I think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for our kids. But I just wanted to say that sometimes Joel understate his efforts here, but he's been working at this for a long time.
Thank you. In addition to the tribal compacting bill, the governor has another bill, the Omnibus bill. Before I speak about that bill, I want to ground it in some information, because our decisions for children should be based in their performance and with data. As you know, Alaska was recently ranked 51st in 4th grade and 4th grade math and reading, 51st in 8th grade reading, and 47th in math. While NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Education Progress, isn't the sole measure of student achievement, it does highlight a significant gap between what our students can do and how they compare to their peers around the nation. Regardless of whether one agrees with the assessment, the results clearly show a disparity. Because NAEP is administered consistently across states, it does provide educators, policymakers, and parents a standardized benchmark for comparing student achievement. The 2024 NAEP results should serve as a wake-up call not only to Alaska, but to our nation. If we want to accelerate learning, we must rethink how we allocate education funding. I strongly believe in increased investment in public education, but that investment must be tied to improving student outcomes. A return on investment is a must. There's a bright spot with celebrating student achievement. Alaska's early learning screener for grades K through 3 showed significant progress, thanks to strong policies implemented under the bipartisan READS Act, now in its 3rd year. This legislation emphasizes the science of reading, ensuring students receive high-quality instruction, ongoing teacher professional development, regular assessments, informed parental engagement, and district support. And as a result, Alaska students outperformed the national average in their growth. Again, Alaska outperformed in our first year the growth average of the nation. Our teachers and students knocked the ball out of the park. This is evidence that strong policy coupled with our financial investments directly impacts student learning. Alaska's students and educators are more than capable of success, and I look forward to the progress ahead. Speaking about the governor's Omnibus education bill, it is a student-focused initiative designed to allocate education dollars strategically for maximum impact. This legislation enhances Alaska's education system by emphasizing early learning achievement, implementing a restriction on cell phone use, expanding enrollment flexibility, supporting charter schools, investing in teacher retention and recruitment of increasing career and technical education, expanding career access for correspondence schools and students, and boosting transportation and boarding school funding. Finally, it makes a significant investment into our teachers. I'll touch on some key features of this reform. This bill does increase options for public school enrollment. Parents should have the ability to choose the best educational setting for their children. However, Many Alaskan families face barriers that limit their options. This bill seeks to promote, or to remove rather, those roadblocks, ensuring parents and school districts have the greater flexibility they need. To further public school options, the Department of Education will oversee a transportation plan that addresses choice, making it easier for students to attend their chosen schools. Additionally, districts experiencing enrollment growth after the fall reporting period will receive funding adjustments to accommodate their increased student population. This bill expands public charter school opportunities, and the state board will have the authority to approve charter schools within districts while also expanding authorization to other local governmental agencies, such as municipalities or the University of Alaska. The primary goal of public charter schools is to enhance student success and foster educational innovation, ultimately benefiting the entire public school system. Public charter schools in Alaska add value. Creating new opportunities for students strengthens education statewide. We also incentivize reading achievement. To promote literacy, schools will receive $450 for every student in grades K through 6 who meet grade level standards or show growth in reading to those standards. This investment underscores Alaska's commitment to academic success. We're also speaking to regulating cell phone use in schools. Except in special cases, student cell phones will be prohibited during school hours. The increasing distraction of technology has reached epidemic levels, demanding systemic solutions. Limiting cell phone use is not just a policy decision, it's a necessary intervention to restore focus in the classroom and protect students' well-being. This bill addresses transportation and boarding school funding. It provides 20% adjustment to transportation funding and increased per pupil funding for boarding schools by 50%. Residential schools play a crucial role in student success, offering college and career readiness opportunities for those who choose a highly structured education path. This bill also grows career and technical education funding. All schools will receive CTE funding with an adjustment totaling $32 million. This aligns with the governor's broader workforce development strategy, preparing students for Alaska's jobs and Alaska's future. This bill expands support for correspondence learning. Students in correspondence programs will now receive full education funding, increasing their average daily membership allocation, which presently is 90%, to 100%. This change ensures equal support to access the essential resources, including special education, gifted education, career education, and English language learning programs. Alaska's funding formula must prioritize learning opportunities for all students, regardless of their education learning and setting. Finally, we invest in Alaska's teachers. A key provision of this bill is a direct investment in classroom teachers through lump sum payments, which are a key component of the governor's teacher retention and recruitment findings. Depending on the remoteness of their assignment, teachers will receive $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 annually for a 3-year period. Teachers are the cornerstone of success, and this initiative recognizes their invaluable contributions to Alaska's children. In summary, this bill demonstrates a forward-focused commitment to students and their learning. I'm excited to champion this bold, student-centered approach. School funding discussions must not focus only on dollars spent, but on the return of the investments to our schools. The coming years will be pivotal for our state. By setting these high standards and empowering parents with educational options, we create an environment where educators can thrive and students can succeed. Alaska's public schools are more than institutions. They are strategic investments in the future of our state. As an Alaskan educator, I am proud to stand before you today with the governor's vision. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. There's a couple things I want to say. I want to take a moment to thank the people of Koik, Alaska, because in the 1980s I went there to teach. Small Inupiaq Eskimo community on the Seward Peninsula. Probably 6 of the best years of my life. And during that process, I learned a lot about the similarities amongst people, but also the differences, the historical differences. And the work that Joel and Sonia and others are doing is long overdue. This is an opportunity, I think, through tribal compacting to really bring a needed perspective. The parents of these children, the elders of these children, into an educational system that I think, with a few tweaks that the folks are working on, I think is going to be a great approach to help kids that oftentimes struggle in an ordinary neighborhood school situation. So I want to thank them. I want to do a shout out for Kotzebue too. I'm going to do a shout out for Sandy Kowalski, who used to be one of my assistant superintendents. She, along with a number of folks in Kotzebue, including Pete and Polly Schaefer, started a language immersion school in Kotzebue using tribal money. And they were able to make, I think, terrific inroads in helping kids understand who they are, what their history was, what their language is. And, there was always the question as to whether if you do that, will their academics fall off? And that's not necessarily the case when you're dealing with not just tribal compacting, but other charter schools as well, and other approaches. And so it was over the decades that really gave me a real feeling, a real idea that there's not just one way to educate a human being. We all have our own stories. We all have our own situations that we have to deal with. I then went to the Mat-Su, where I was the administrator for the Mat-Su Central School, which is now the largest school in the entire state of Alaska. It's a correspondence program. It's a homeschool program. So many stories as to why kids go there. And this omnibus bill that Dr. Bishop laid out the intent is solely to improve outcomes for kids. We saw that with the READS Act. We saw what our efforts there in the READS Act has done so far. But it's always been a fight. It's always been a fight by those that want to protect the status quo. When charter school initiatives were introduced decades ago in the state of Alaska, I was teaching at the time. I was a principal at that time. There were fights back then to stop that. The argument was, if you do this, then kids will leave the neighborhood schools. There'll be all kinds of problems. But what was not being taken into account is what works for parents and what works for kids. Same thing happened with the homeschool programs that we have today that was started in the 90s. Galena was a lead in that. IDEA was a lead in that. I remember being in conversations with other superintendents, members of school boards saying, we've got to stop this thing. And I would say, why? Why do we have to stop this thing? Why do we have to stop choice in public schools so that parents, kids, families can get the right education for their kids? I saw no reason for that, and I don't today. I think we have a moral imperative to have a conversation that's just not about money. If the scores that that Dina has talked about, and we're going to show you here in a moment on the screen, if these scores don't motivate the discussion about policy, I don't know what will, to be honest with you. Now, you're going to have some people say, well, we'll talk about policy, but we got to take care of funding first. Never happens. We take care of funding, and there's never a conversation about policy. As far as I'm concerned, it's a bait and switch. There's no reason why we can't do both. And as I started this press conference, I said, I think we're having some great conversations. And I'm not just saying that. I'm pretty encouraged about the conversations that we're having. But we're going to throw some stats up on the screen here that I want to show you. And I don't know how the special interests of no change are going to spin this, right? Because what you usually hear is, well, the reason they do well down there or they do well over there is they don't have to deal with poverty. Or the reason they do well down there or over there is they have more money in education. Or it's a race issue. We have more minority children here. And it's true. I mean, 20% of our population is Native American, largest in the entire state of Alaska. But as a father of kids that went through the public school, as a father of kids that are tribal members and ANCSA Corporation members, as a father whose kids went to school in rural Alaska as young children, a friend of folks in rural Alaska, I can tell you that we can do so much more. And I just am I can't be more excited about the work that's happening. And so let's put on the screen, if we can, our first chart so I can talk about this. Here's our NAEP, here's the national NAEP reading scores. If you guys want to come over and take a look at it, you guys can stand over there, because I'm going to be walking around in front here. So there's a state I want to point out called Mississippi. The governor currently is Tate Reeves, but the initiatives on reading started years ago. And they had a similar conversation that we had just a couple years ago. How can we help our kids do better? What do you do to help them do better? What policy do you implement? Well, there were people down there that didn't think those kids could read. There were people down there that didn't think that was going to happen. You're just wasting your time. But under previous governors, and still carried forth now under Governor Reeves, they never bought into those excuses as to why kids can't learn. So let's look at what they're actually doing pretty good. They used to be at the bottom of the barrel. But down here at 51st is the great state of Alaska. Want that to sink in for a moment. Is it because our kids are incapable? Is it because our teachers can't teach? I reject both of those reasons. It's because the policies that we have before us that we're contemplating are not in place now. That the ability to give kids a focus on reading that just took place just a couple years ago, and that bill only passed by one vote. And we're seeing great outcomes now for our kids in reading. But Mississippi was down here, and they rejected that. They said there's no way we're going to allow our kids to be mired in a situation where they can't read or perform in school. Why is this okay? Why is this not a moral imperative? That's the work that these folks are doing with tribal compacting, because they see methods by which our Native kids can learn better. We want to expand our charter schools, which we're going to show you a chart again, and I know that people don't like to be reminded of these inconvenient facts. But this is where Alaska is today. It just came out. I don't know how much lower you can get than 51. And I hope this is the end of this. This is the last time we see this. Next slide, please. That's the one I always used to hear. It's poverty. It's poverty rates. Alaska's poverty rates. Our kids just can't learn because of poverty. Mississippi has the second highest poverty rates in the entire country. They don't let that be the excuse for not teaching kids how to read or providing them an environment for them to succeed in. Alaska's poverty rates, we're actually in the lower, almost the lower quartile. We're down there with Virginia, New Jersey, Washington, Colorado. Our poverty rates don't compare with Mississippi's rates, so that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. Next slide. But we don't spend enough on kids. The state of Alaska does not spend, this is the big thing down here, right? It's money, does not spend enough. We have to spend more. If we spent more, we wouldn't be 51st. Look at where Mississippi spends. It's another narrative that they rejected, okay? Alaska is actually, I believe, in the top 7. It's true, there was a time we were number 1, when we did have a lot of oil money. It's true. We're still in the top 7, but our scores are 51st. We have a moral imperative to design systems, allocate resources, and come up with policy that's going to change this narrative for the state of Alaska. I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to cave in the special interests that are down here, and they will be down here, and I mentioned that in the speech the other day, with their signs, with their sweatshirts saying, money, money. It's going to be both. We have another slide? So there you have the comparisons. Mississippi and poverty rates, Alaska's got lower poverty rates. Mississippi on per pupil spending, low, Alaska high. NAEP scores, Mississippi doing better than it has in the past, Alaska doing worse than we have in the past. Do we have another slide on the charters? This has been a very, very interesting discussion the past year and a half. You know, I shouldn't be surprised at anything that happens in politics in the state of Alaska, but I have to be honest with you. I really was. So a study, one of the only studies that's ever been done on outcomes into charter schools nationwide, not inputs, but outcomes, by Harvard, came out and said when they studied charter school systems in the country, Alaska's charter school system came out number one. Now, this is the part that really I thought was phenomenal. I thought there'd be cheering. I thought there would be people congratulating each other. I thought there'd be people saying, how do we replicate that? How do we duplicate that? And it wasn't just crickets that I got. It was, well, we don't know if, I don't know if we can trust this study. I don't think this is true. This can't be true. Most states, like right now, Mississippi is celebrating their growth. Most states, you would think, in the charter school world, and I think many individual Alaskans that are aware of how well our charter schools are doing think that's fantastic. But the guardians of the status quo and the guardians of the money-only monologue, they're coming up with all kinds of reasons. Maybe the planets aren't aligned or something's not right. There's no way we could be doing well. I've never heard anything like it. So, I think it's our last slide, correct? So, poverty, Mississippi's not using that as an excuse. Spending, Mississippi's not using that as an excuse. Their NAEP scores, Mississippi's not using that as an excuse. And what we don't have up here is the demographics of Mississippi. Large African-American population that oftentimes people will say, when you have minority populations, they can't learn. You look at some of our charter schools. And some of our charter schools today are Native-focused charter schools. They're doing well. And so we're going to continue the discussion on education. But it's going to be really difficult for me to accept. Throw all of this out. Throw all of this out and say, yeah, here you go. Here's a check for how many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Just go do what you want. Because if we do, I don't see how this changes. And some people are going to say, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I know that's dismissed a lot, the fact that I taught for 22 years, that I was a principal and a superintendent, that I was a school board president, that I did work with the Department of Education, that I did work with K-12 and the university. I know that's dismissed. But stats and facts don't lie. And that's the message I want to get across to people. And that's the purpose of the Omnibus bill. And that's why I support what these great folks are doing over here, to try and help kids. And all I'm going to ask the people that are going to say, no, there's going to be overtime now after this press conference. We got to stop this madness. This is madness. That's madness. There's no way anywhere in the world. I don't think there's a village in Afghanistan that if they had NAEP scores like that, they would say, yeah, it's okay. It's all right. I guess with that, we're turning it to you.
So, Governor, you talked about the Harvard study. That Harvard study talked about the types of authorizers that for charter schools that perform better than others. You cited that last year in your proposal to have the state authorize these schools, because in the study they performed better than that. But in the study, university and municipal authorized charter schools performed worse than those authorized by school districts. Can you talk about sort of what data is driving your decision to expand that list of authorizers?
The authorizer, by the way, I had the professor in my office. He came down here to present. So I spoke with him one-on-one. We're not talking about private charters. And I got to make sure people understand, because whenever I say that, people say, they're private schools. Our charters are not private. These are public schools, okay? And the Harvard study does say that authorization by states are doing better than the others. All we're saying is Let's expand that authorization process to your own Department of Education, which is in charge of education in the state of Alaska. This is not a private outfit here. This is not some private outfit anywhere. This is the State Department of Education that's been around since statehood. We're asking it for us to be able to expand those charter schools because there are kids on wait lists waiting for a charter school. So it has nothing to do with expanding it to private schools. It's our own state. That's the crazy thing about this. The NEA Alaska does not want this to happen. I don't know why, but they don't. Just like they didn't want the teacher salaries to happen, or excuse me, the teacher incentives to happen last year. I don't know why. But the moral imperative, once again, is to accommodate kids that are waiting to get into charter schools. You have a follow-up?
I do, because the question I was really asking is, this bill would expand the list of authorizers to also include the university and municipalities, if
Which
I
are
read.
not, they're not private, they're public.
No, of course they're not private. My question is, in that study, charter schools authorized by universities and municipalities performed worse, both than authorized by the state and authorized by local school districts. I'm curious, how you worked that data into your development of this bill.
I believe that if we can authorize these, these charter schools to accommodate all these kids on the wait list, if we can do that through the existing system that we have, that would have been great. That's not happening. A lot of your public schools, districts aren't authorizing enough charter schools. So we would like the Department of Education to do it. We put other charters out there, such as municipalities, universities. We believe that the universities, I think in the state of Alaska, given the nature of our small size, I think they could actually run a charter school authorization program that I think our kids would do better in. I have more faith, I guess, in our university system than maybe some of the others. But I would be happy just to have the state do it if we can do it. But having public authorizers do it, I don't think is a bad thing as long as they are meeting muster. I think we can demonstrate that those schools as well could probably do just as well as the existing school districts. I would love just to have the school districts open up their authorization and get as many charter schools authorized as possible.
Jazz Garrett, the Alaska Beacon. I'm with the Juneau Empire, actually. Hello, Governor. My question is, how can the Alaska Reads Act be expanded when schools are already struggling to provide basic support for students?
You want to take that?
Thank you for your question. So the Alaska Reads Act just ensures high quality instruction, professional development, communication with parents, and assessments. And so it's really built into the system of schooling. And I would challenge anyone to say that our public schools should not have a priority for reading as one of the subjects taught. So it is actually a core subject of public education. This bill actually does provide an additional $450 to students who meet that proficiency, but also, as demonstrated by the great work that was already done by teachers, any student that shows and demonstrates that growth in learning would also receive that $450. So to your question of not doing more, number one, reading has always been a requirement, I believe, of the people of Alaska who has established their public schools. And then number two, the Omnibus bill actually invests quite a bit of money into K-6 students. Thank you.
Corinne Smith, Alaska Beacon.
Hi, I was wondering if you could speak more to the charter school performance and what are the factors involved and why those students are performing so much better?
Well, I'll have the commissioner speak to that, but when you coalesce around a mission, tight mission, like the charter schools have to have a mission, their charter, it's part of their charter, parental group, that helps focus everybody on what that mission is. And basic skills such as reading or math, sometimes these are language schools, et cetera. In the case of compacting, it'll be using an indigenous native approach so that folks can coalesce around it. But Dina, if you want to talk about a little more about some aspects of the charter schools.
Thank you, Governor. The charter school law in Alaska was actually established just to find out, like, what is it and what is the innovations for children to succeed. And so we have the evidence that children are succeeding in charters. And as the governor shared, there's multiple different types. I did survey because I too talked to that researcher, and his number one thing was your question to me. And so we surveyed our principals and talked with them, and they did cite that it's a focus with parents, and parents want their children to go to that school. It's a focus for teachers. Teachers seek to teach at a school for which they have similar beliefs and that innovation around education that they want to participate in. But interesting, another key feature that they shared is that they are true community schools, although they don't have a general location per se, a draw area as a lot of other schools in our neighborhoods do, that they shared the community familiar access, if you will, that they now are having generations of children being taught in their systems, and they feel that that strong family connection to their school is a key feature. But again, charter schools were designed for multiple purposes for children and parents to establish a school where kids love to go, kids are achieving, and teachers and parents work together for the betterment of all of Alaska's children. Thanks.
Next, we have Jeff Landfield with the Alaska Landmine.
Hello. I have a pretty fun question. You had a very compelling presentation there, and the bill I see doesn't have any funding increase, but the House right now is advancing a bill very quickly. They're talking about 1,800, which is like 3 times more than they agreed to last year. So the question is this the carrot? If they pass this, you'll agree to a funding increase. And if they don't do this, the stick is you'll veto any funding increase again.
Yeah, that's actually a great question, Jeff. Not just fun. You want to talk about the factors and stuff?
Thank you.
Dina's going to talk about the formula. Yeah, but we're going to talk about what's in the bill, and we're going to talk about the formula, because all you hear about is the BSA, which means more money. We're going to talk about how that money is going to be distributed within this bill through the factors. Go ahead.
Thank you. That's a great question. And this bill actually does have quite millions of dollars in it, almost close to, do we have the final? 185 million approximately? Yeah, we'll get that number, but it is actually placed within the formula to the items and the interventions, if you will, and the education that we want to see happen. So while the BSA stands alone as just a number, when you put it through the multipliers of what is this actually going to do for students, we want to increase Alaska's workforce and opportunities in all schools to have career and technical education. We have increased that multiplier for career education that all schools will have. We increased the multiplier for boarding schools. A lot of rural Alaska's, extensive programs happen in boarding schools for career and technical, as well as other development for college and career. We have increased the formula and are supporting through transportation. We heard that from districts. So we're hitting on key features that are costly in districts. So we've increased by 20% transportation. We have increased for all students to have access to the student support multipliers. Prior to this time, correspondence students received a portion of the BSA outside the formula. However, they are and do participate in special education services in their districts. They do participate in career and technical education. They do participate in English language learning as well as gifted programs. So those students would have access to those funding units in the formula that will also build out our correspondence and school districts. 32 of our school districts have correspondence schools that they're serving multiple students. In addition, of course, what are some other indicators that we have in the bill? Lacey Sanders, the director of OMB.
Hello, everyone. I'll just address 2 real quick items. Governor on the side asked me for a quick number. It's the mental math I was doing on the side, and how much money that we've invested in education over the last 3 years. And above and beyond just the standard base level education, we've invested close to $500 million in education. And that's just through the one-time funding that's been put towards it. In the bill that's being, the education omnibus bill that's being proposed, it adds approximately $117 million in 2026, and then it increases up to $181 million. That was the number Commissioner Bishop was referencing when the lump sum payments for teachers are put into play. So
The incentives.
the incentives,
The
yes.
recruitment and retention incentives, yeah. So Jeff, that's a great question. There's one side that's just talking about money. We're talking about money and policy coming together. That's what this bill does. There'll be money in it.
Sean McGuire, ADN.
Governor, 80 or so percent of students do not attend correspondence programs or charter schools. They're in regular brick and
Say
mortar.
how much was that?
I think 80% of students are in brick and mortar schools,
Okay.
roughly around that number. Why do you focus so much on the other sorts of students in Alaska's public education system rather than the 80% of kids?
I do.
Would you-
I do focus on the 80% of kids as well.
Could you
My
explain
kids,
how?
my kids went to Wasilla High and went to public schools. I do focus on that. This is one of the reasons why we want to do incentives for our teachers, because that was one of the biggest things we found out over the years through research was teacher turnover and having a difficult time getting teachers, especially in rural Alaska. So I do focus on them. I spent my career in neighborhood schools. The end of my career was in Matsu Central. But I also remember when I was in Matsu, we had about 3,000 to 4,000 kids that live within our borough, but were not attending our schools. And I couldn't understand it. And so we did some exploration as to what was going on. What we found out was, for a number of different reasons, those kids had different stories as to why a neighborhood school in their zip code wasn't going to work for them. And I could spend hours telling you the different stories. We do have also, by the way, just an aside, in our bill, the ability for kids to go to any public school anywhere in the state. And we're getting some pushback on that. But no, Sean, I support our neighborhood schools. This is one of the reasons why we have teacher incentive pay in here. This is why we had the READS Act, and we have READS Act money in here. This isn't just the focus on homeschool. This isn't just the focus on charter schools. We just want to expand things that it appears that the public is interested in being part of. So I gotta be honest with you guys. The narrative, the story is not complete. And it's not being written, I think, to be honest with you, in a complete fashion. Dunleavy doesn't want money. He just wants this stuff over here. That's not the case. I've been talking about policy and money for years. We put money in. We continue to put money in. We're putting money in this. Money's going in. Money. So let's just make sure we understand it. Money is going in. Okay? So thank you. She's going to write that down. Dunleavy says money's going in. At least somebody will. Okay? But what about the policies? Are you okay with 51%? Are you okay with our NAEP scores at 50? We're 51. Are you okay with that? Are you, I don't know, Sean, what your plans are. Maybe someday you have a child. Are you excited about that? You say, come on, Johnny, get up to school. Let's go to where we're at 51st in the nation. Are you okay with that? Yes or no? Are you okay with this? Are you okay with this? Yes or no? There we go. There we go. No answer. No answer. No answer. No answer. Gotcha. Is anybody in this room okay with us being at 51st in our NAEP scores? Is anyone here? Raise your hand if you're saying that's great. And then explain to me why, because it might be a different universe I dwell in. We're doing money. We're not just focusing on charter schools. This is a complete package. The other side just wants money, and they want us to shut up about this. That's the problem. You can't shut up about this. It stares you right in the face. I don't know if people here in this room have children or are going to someday. I can guarantee you this. You're not just going to kick them out the door, I hope, and just hope they come back home after 4 o'clock. I got a feeling you're going to try and figure out what's the best environment for those kids. My job, the moral imperative, is for me to put policy forth that changes this paradigm. So I'm focused on neighborhood schools. I'm focused on charter schools. I'm focused on home schools. I'm focused on mission schools. I'm focused on tech schools. I'm focused on language immersion schools. Just get your friends on the other side that are just focused on money to also talk about this. And when you talk to them, just say, hey, don't use that poverty thing on me, because we know the stats. And don't use the race thing on me. And don't use the fact, go to the money one. Go to the money slide. Oh, and don't use this on me. We just put $300 million into it over the last couple of years. We're going to put more money into it. So do me a favor, make the headline this. Dunleavy asks why it's just about money and why there's not just as strong as an effort to get policy. Ask, can I pay you? I'll get a subscription to your newspaper if you put that headline up. Other questions? Dunleavy threatens to buy a subscription.
We're going to move to the phone. Tim Rocky, Alaska Public Media.
Morning, Governor.
Good
help
morning.
clarify this for me, and this may be a question for Dr. Bishop, but I'm reading from the reporter packet here. Would allowing students to apply and attend any school within the state without tuition, subject to capacity and enrollment policies, would that effectively nullify school boundaries? I'm looking through the bill text. I'm not seeing anything specifically related to location. And if that is the case, can you explain the goal of sort of removing the neighborhood aspect from neighborhood schools? Would a student who, for example, lives in Wasilla, would they be able to commute to an Anchorage school for classes as long as that school is not already at capacity?
Yes, exactly. You got it. You hit the nail on the head. Perfect. That's exactly what this would do. So if a mother is commuting from Matsu or vice versa, and they have a child, and maybe they have a child with a special need or a special circumstance, yes, they could go to one of our public schools, as opposed to being locked into a 5-block square area. They could go to a public school, and we would publicly educate them with public school teachers in a public school district with public school money. That's correct. Next question.
We'll go to Mark Sabatini from the Juneau Empire.
Oh, boy.
Governor, I need to clarify something before I ask my question. That same thing you just referenced, it says any school. Does that include private schools?
No,
or
public
religious
school.
Schools or anything without tuition?
Public school.
Okay, good enough. All right. So my question is, the provisions in this seem to largely take away local control, and this has come up before. For example, allowing the state to authorize charter schools means districts have to accept it even if they don't want it, and everything else. It seems very targeted. Rather than increasing the BSA and just letting local districts do what they want with the money, it's pretty much being dictated to them what they're going to do with this money. And
No.
I would ask, does that go against the concept of local control? And if so, why do you believe that's the best approach?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. And maybe what we need to do, to be quite honest with you, Dina, is go through our AS 1400 statutes in which over the decades, the legislature has compelled the Department of Education to intervene in schools and school districts when they're not performing. We have countless statutes that talk about that. This was never, and there is never anywhere in this country a place where it's just two people. Lacey cuts the check and Dina signs the check, and that's it. For obvious reasons. So here you go. You can't get more local, Mark, than a parent that is making a decision for their kid. You can't get more local than a group of teachers and parents that want to start a charter school at the local level. That's local. So it depends on how you define local. If local is the school district, by the way, which the state formed. The state wasn't formed and there were 52 school districts here. The state's gone through a whole bunch of different variations of school districts, SOS, state-operated schools, there were BIA schools, et cetera. The state's job is to ensure the kids get educated through a system of schools. The Constitution compels us to educate our kids. So I know I hear this this local control issue a lot, and I think you cannot get more local than the parent and their child, or the parent and a group of teachers that want to form a charter school. I don't know how more local you get than that. Again, I was the president of the Matsu School Board. I was a superintendent. I know what this is.
Next, we have Iris Samuels from the ADN.
Sean, you're not
Hi,
the
thank
idea,
you.
the
I
idea, are you?
see that
are?
Deputy
All right, I might
Attorney
buy one
General
subscription
Corey
system.
Mills is there in the room, and I was wondering if she'd be able to respond to some of the statements that have been put out there about potential challenges to whether the state is meeting its constitutional obligation to fund public schools.
Do you take another run at that question, Iris? I want to make sure I heard it.
Sure thing. Yeah, we've basically heard from some advocacy groups that they are considering
Advocacy
filing
groups.
a lawsuit.
How do you
against-
define an advocacy
Yeah.
group, Iris? What is an advocacy group?
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, can you define an advocacy? Tell me who the advocacy groups are. What define them? Alaskans for more money. What's the advocacy group?
I'm actually blanking on what this particular group is
yeah,
called, but
happens to me
it's a
too.
group of Alaskans who want to advocate for public schools, and they have put out there that basically they are considering filing a lawsuit against the state over whether or not it is meeting its constitutional obligation to fund the public education system. So I was just hoping if you could speak on whether you think there's any merit to such a challenge.
I have no idea. There's been there's a long line of suit filers in the state of Alaska. We just had a suit last year on homeschools. Supreme Court came out 5-0 and said the homeschool laws are constitutional. So, I mean, people are going to file suit. That's how people make money. That's how people change some wrongs at times. But I would say, I don't know. I can't answer that question. Maybe they file suit. Maybe the courts come back and say X amount of money needs to go in or it doesn't. I can't really address that. That's a theoretical. Sean?
The organization Iris is referring to is the Coalition for Education Equity, which has won suits against the state, including Kasili and more suits.
And what was in the Kasili and Moore suits? Do you remember?
Well, it's to do with infrastructure funding.
That was Kasili.
Yeah.
And what was the Moore? Very important. It was to do what? Intervene in districts in which the kids were not performing.
Right. But the Moore lawsuit ended with saying that all students in Alaska need the opportunity to be able to the
Yes.
targets that are put out there across the
Yes, that's why we're supporting tribal compacting, these other approaches. Yes.
Right, but now the Coalition for Education Equity, the same group which has beaten the state effectively in court twice. I mean, there was a settlement. I know there was a settlement as an agreement.
I wasn't governor then, but yes, go ahead.
Right, but they are arguing that the current funding levels are at a point where students are not able to meet the standards set out by the state, meaning the state is failing constitutional responsibility to maintain the system of public schools.
Then then I'm not trying to be a wise guy. They may end up filing a suit. What was the amount of money we put in last year at the end of the year? We put 174 million in. If they file a suit and if the courts come back and they say that that's not enough, then that's what the courts will say, and then we'll have to address that. Yeah, but don't forget what the Moore case was about. It was about making sure our kids are being educated everywhere.
Right.
It wasn't just money. What does a subscription cost?
I think it's $99 a year.
$99 a year?
We're worth it.
Yeah, you guys do get the Alaska
Next question.
We have Ashlyn O'Hara with KDLL Public Radio.
Yeah, thank you, Governor. I guess I'm seeking clarity on your proposed reading proficiency incentive grants. I guess where does that concept come from, and is there demonstrated success in other states that this type of like cash incentive for student performance works when it comes to boosting
Cash
outcomes?
incentives? Are we talking about cash incentives for student performance or for staying in a place and being retained? Go ahead, talk to it.
Thank you. That's a great question. This is looking at grants to school districts who are developing those programs of their choice to impact student learning and reading. And so, yes, it should be an expectation, and it has worked, that the expectation that children read and you use resources to engage and make sure that happens, absolutely. And we will incentivize that with $450 for every student that is on grade level. But everyone who sends a student to public school expects them to grow when they send them, that they're increasing their learning. Some students may not make that final cut of proficiency, but they are growing. If a student in his or her classroom is being taught and moving towards that proficiency, we are also incentivizing that. So yes, paying and investing in success is a winner. Thank you.
Can I follow up with that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so just to circle back on like demonstrated success there, I guess, is there any evidence that that type of cash incentive for outcomes actually works?
This is an investment in schools, and so I'm not sure about your cash incentive. Like the governor, I don't know if you think it's not directly to students and it's not directly to teachers. It is an investment like other grants, like the Learning Opportunities Grant that we provide per pupil as well, other grants that we invest. And so, yes, we do look to meet the need of schools K-6. They have shared feedback that they'd like to do more for their children, and this is an investment to ensure that it happens. Thank you.
Next, we have Emily Schwing from KYUK. Emily, are you there? Okay, we'll move on to our final question. Ian Stewart with Your Alaska Link.
Hello. I think most of what I need to know has been addressed, but I'll just ask this, I guess. And I apologize if we tread some same ground. But there are some school districts, facing financial uncertainty, most notably like the Anchorage School District. So I guess, Governor, to sum it up, how do you plan to help school districts facing financial challenges, and what steps are you taking to ensure that other districts in the state don't face similar difficulties?
Yeah, I'll repeat what we said earlier, and I'm not sure if you got it. Our approach is to increase funding. If we get a bill that we can get around, it'll have funding and policy in it, and it'll be multi-year funding, which should address the issues that we're talking about. We put, how much was it again? Last year? $175 million last year into it. The other thing that we got to be careful about, and we got to have honest conversations. Our demographics in the state of Alaska, as in many states across the country, are falling. We're having less children. The population is getting older. So we just have to also be honest. In some places, you may have legacy systems in which we have too much school space for the falling numbers of students that we have. And we're going to have that discussion on what do we do there. Because most of the time in an economy like we've had for 150 years or more, it's predicated upon growth. More roads, more buildings, more hospitals, more schools. But once your population levels out, it starts to fall. You don't need as many schools. Certainly, you probably don't need as many buildings. The question is then what do you do? And that's a discussion that we're going to have. Other states are having it right now. They're having it in Seattle. They're having it all across the country. So we are putting money into it. And that's $99 a year. And then the headline, Dunleavy says they put money in and they will continue to do so. Okay? I'll get my own bead lady to cut a check tomorrow morning if I see that. If I can get a 80 in. Any other questions? Okay.
I'll do it.
You have a question? What do they say? What they send you? Tell me. Tell me what the question is.
I had something to question about cook and let gas. You mentioned in the state of the state that there's temporary and painful options.
Yeah.
Short-term options. I took that to mean imported gas.
Possibly, and that's a conversation utilities are having, but we've made it clear if that has to happen as a backup to cook inlet gas, because we're trying to get more gas out of the inlet, they may or may not need to import, but for backup purposes, if that's going to happen, I think you're going to see a whole number of groups and agencies want to make sure that is temporary and that is a light impact. To be honest with you,
But it seems in it.
that's a theoretical. Could be. Could be.
In Japan about Trump and
I'm sorry. What?
saying they're reporting that Reuters reporting that Trump, Japanese might be willing to kick in money for gas line to Trump happy.
Well, I haven't heard about the part about making Trump happy. Usually they do this for an investment purposes, but we have a number of investors because of what's occurring in the world looking at this pipeline. And again, Jeff, I'm not going to be at the head of the parade until we have signed agreements, but we're heading in that direction. So I guess we're ending this pretty quick here, okay? Well, anyway, again, I didn't see hands go up that you would send your kid anywhere willy-nilly and you would want to make sure they have the best education possible. I hope you do print that there is a misperception or a concerted effort to paint Dunleavy as not wanting to care about kids or teachers. Look at our omnibus bill. Look at what we did last year. You brought up a great question, young man with the headphones on. And that is one of the reasons we put municipalities in and universities, and I just remember this, is there was talk last year with some of the legislators saying, we don't necessarily trust the Department of Education, so would you give some thought to other authorizers? So that was one of the reasons why we did that. Put that slide up, and I'm gonna end this, not that one, because nobody wants to see the fact that we're doing great in charter schools. All right, let's go to this one here, which is painful. And there's people right now closing their eyes. That's a fact. I didn't make it up. This is coming from the feds. This is NAEP scores. Every grade through 4 and 8, okay? We're going down. Mississippi's going up. Congratulations, Mississippi. It doesn't have to be this way. In the state of the state, I said I reject decline. It was in reference to oil on the slope, but it could be a reference to the decline of Alaska. It doesn't have to be this way. If we get these initiatives across the finish line, coupled with money, got that? Coupled with money, I will guarantee you, with the teachers that we have, and I think we have some fantastic teachers, and with the approaches that we're talking about, you're going to see these scores go up. And I don't think Alaska can be matched when we put our minds to it. But if this is just going to be a money-only conversation, that's going to be the reality for quite some time. So with that, I want to thank you all. Look forward to, do you guys have a temporary subscription, or I just want to see what you print tomorrow before I dive right in with a subscription? Anyway, look forward to talking with you guys about what happens here. Thank you. Come on, guys.